Welcome back to the home studio. Welcome to episode number 10 of the Stevie Richards Show. Before we get started, I need you to do a little bit of prep work. Each and every one of you out there, including my co host, James, get your half shirt, get your Daisy Dukes ready, make sure they're short enough, and enjoy episode 10. We're going to talk about the early days of Steve Richards and Stevie Richards in ECW. And more specifically, we're going to talk about, and we're really going to have a deep dive into the person that is responsible. So if you don't like the show, it's his fault, not mine. We're going to talk about Raven and Raven's Nest. Before we do that, my co host James is on the other end. How are you doing, James?
I did my best to come up with a band t-shirt, and I thought, well, this is as ungrunge as it gets, but it's the only band t-shirts I have. I mean, I've got one of Wasp as well somewhere. Don't ask why. Thing is, when I had band t-shirts, not that I was a big band t-shirt fan, but they were always like Oasis or Stone Roses. You had to have something round here that represented Manchester. It was almost like a legal requirement. So this is the best I could do in the short amount of time. I do have my Daisy Dukes on as well, but thankfully it's only filmed from the waist up. But yes, thank you everybody for joining us for episode 10, Raven's Nest. This is going to be a part one of part whatever it is. It's not going to be part one, part two, sort of consecutively. We'll sort of come back to this at a later episode as well. But before we get to Raven, Scott Levy, and everything surrounding his ECW debut and early feuds, I have two books if you are interested, one on Owen, Hart and one on The Rock. Links are in the description, available from Amazon only. And Stevie has much to tell you about as well.
Yes, thank you, James. Actually, I have to write the book outline for my book today in order to start conversing and communicating with ECW Press, the very nice guy, Michael, over there. I do have a ghost author in mind that will work together, a really great guy, awesome British accent, and everybody here in the audience just loves to death. And, and also I have Stevie Richards Fitness. That's my fitness brand. I also have resistance band training programs at StevieRichardsFitness.com. And of course, cameo.com/Stevie Richards. Now, if you look at the description of these videos, it might change to say Stevie's links, which I'm pretty much gonna put everything in one link tree. So stay tuned for that. That way you can go to one page and whatever you choose. As far as our recommended brands or even social media or follow me or even contacting me, it will be in that link tree. So that's about it. I think your accent is awesome, James. I don't care what anybody says.
Who's crapping on my accent?
They hate our accents as equally. Accents. What word was that I just said?
That's the problem. We're salt of the earth, man. That's how it goes. If you want posh in pro wrestling, I don't know who's got a posh accent in pro wrestling podcasting these days.
I don't know. We have a show. We don't have a podcast, so I'm not familiar with this podcast.
Yeah, we're above this podcast nonsense. Let's get into the main meat of everything. But apart from just before we get to Raven, we wanted to briefly mention Sid Udy. He passed away. He was the age 63. Been battling cancer for the past few years in private. No one, I've got my ear to the ground with these kinds of things. I didn't realise this either. So I wanted to do a quick Sid mention, rest in peace. And also, you had, just before we went on air, or you texted me this, you had a really interesting tidbit about Sid and how he could have become part of your run in WWE.
Yes, and I have to preface that with just Sid was absolutely larger than life in physical means, with charisma, with poise, with presence, to be able to have something that people would think was a one-dimensional character. And of course, the WWF machine at the time, putting that Psycho Sid moniker and retooling the Psycho music, the Norman Bates Psycho music, everything. And that was my favorite era too. I mentioned it before with the Owen Hart, with the cards spinning in the corners, with the overhead Wile E. Coyote shot. I love the eyes that were in the ring when they did that. And even when Sid won the WWF title from Shawn Michaels at Madison Square Garden, probably one of the most insane babyface reactions for a supposed heel, which Sid, he was a heel, but people loved him. Kind of like that Road Warrior type. Who doesn't like an ass kicker? You know what I mean? So that was Sid. But in that, with the Sid behind him and the fireworks, and they got a good 3/4 like Diablo type shot of that. It was really, really cool. But I'm prefacing that because I was always a fan of his work. So one of the first things that I thought of when I was doing Wacko Stevie, and they were calling me Wacko Stevie, and they paired Victoria and myself together as a wacko crazy couple. I was going to writers and some agents. I didn't go straight to Vince because I wasn't sure with Sid, with his standing politically within WWE and WWF previously, because of walking out and doing things like that. I was afraid to actually pitch it to the boss, but the pitch I felt was pretty strong to bring Sid in as a third member of that kind of wacko type of stable. But it would be like little old me starting the fight, starting trouble, getting into trouble, and then Sid kind of cleaning it up for Victoria and myself. And I figured it would be some really good comedic relief as well. I mean, we would be serious in the moment in the segment or the pre-tape or the match, but people would be entertained and kind of hopefully laugh and kind of be lighthearted about it. So that was my pitch, to put Sid in with myself and Victoria. And the rub, would have been incredible from him to us, that Sid would have been a part. And then obviously at the end they would want Sid to beat me up, power bomb me, and walk out. And that would be, what I would expect and would be awesome. But, all in all, that's my wrestling related story. But I don't have too many personal dealings, although Vince Russo did a tribute to him and talked about outside the ring. He was very much a gentleman, very soft spoken, didn't come off like he did on TV, very intimidating, like a bully. Vince said he was quite the opposite as a human being. And I will say this, I didn't know he had any illness. And that's how much of a freak he was physically, because I saw some stuff from him from just a few short months ago. And Sid battling cancer looks better than anybody that works out without cancer. Isn't that crazy? Like, he
Mm.
was just a physical specimen with that. And 63 years old might seem old in pro wrestling, but he was still somebody that probably had 1 to 2 chapters left in his life. And it's sad to see this human being go and have a wife and children to leave behind. So, our thoughts and prayers are with his family, with his loved ones, and definitely is going to be missed. And I think one of the most egregious things, maybe because of the political thing with the walking out on the company, it's an absolute sin because I assumed that he was in the Hall of Fame. Did you just naturally assume he was in it? Because I thought he was, and I discovered yesterday he is not in the Hall of Fame. But this year, I'm guaranteeing you posthumously, he's going to go in at the next WrestleMania.
Yeah, I did because as sort of bit of a sad sack as I am, I actually keep track of these things, and he's one of the people that's like on the top of people who should have been in years ago, let alone, someone who should be inducted around this time. He gave an interview recently as well to a podcast. I don't remember the podcast, but I remember the quote roughly saying that now Vince McMahon is out of WWE, Triple H is in charge, his chances would have improved to get into the Hall of Fame. So that was something definitely, even towards the end, was on his mind. So it's a shame that he, if and when he does get inducted, it'll be posthumously, and I sort of lump him in with Vader. It's like Vader really wanted it. He was a shoo-in for anyone who knows anything about pro wrestling, and they just wouldn't induct him for whatever reason, whether it was Vince McMahon's decision or just didn't like him or politically. Same with Sid, who knows? But it's a damn shame that he didn't get inducted when he was alive, and it's the same for Sid.
Well, let's touch on that for a second. You really think that the Hall of Fame criteria would change? We talk about criteria with the 5-star stuff. There's no definitive thing outside of it's Vince's opinion, and now essentially it's Triple H's opinion. I would hope that Triple H would literally do a Hall of Fame vote. You can pick your guys that you want, like a half dozen people, and do it like the Pro Football Hall of Fame or the Baseball Hall. The baseball one's based, and the football have the journalist. But I would do strictly fan voting, give them 4 to 6 people. We're going to induct 4 of these. And that way, when people get close, they might be hopeful that somebody can get in the next year and still be on the quote ballot. That's the most objective way to put it. You can control it to an extent by having a list of people that you would want to put in anyway. And then, or you can do this. How about a Daniel Bryan yes moving type thing and have it, you write it in. Because Sid, if he wasn't on the list and you had a write-in opportunity from fans, he would run away with it, much like Savage. Savage is I thought Savage, it took forever to get in. I didn't know Sid was in the same boat of that kind of delay of putting him in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it was Randy turned it down throughout his entire life, and Lanny himself just said, "Well, the fans want it," so it's sort of left up to him to make that decision. So Lanny
Randy
put
did it
him.
because he wanted the whole family in there, the whole Poffo family.
Mm.
That was his reasoning for the which is understandable because they put the whole Von Erich family in the Hall of Fame, correct?
Yeah, oh,
So
yeah.
if there is a precedent. Randy has a point with that, and his family meant everything to him as far as his brother, his father, his mother, and everybody around him, from what I know, and that kind of proves that point.
I
Let's
want to
not
get
get
on.
lost on it. Sid's gone. I'm sorry, I went off track. Sid's gone. Unbelievable loss for his family, for the wrestling world, for people like us that grew up watching him and larger life character, but also somebody that hopefully now this will at least, you know, posthumously put him in the Hall of Fame and give his family some sort of positive closure on his career.
Very quickly, I want to touch on again when you said you had pitched for him to come into WWE. You didn't pitch it to Vince. Was this just a writer you pitched this to, or was it one of the office guys?
It was a writer, and then I kind of ran it by a couple agents. I'll tell you what, including I think one of them might have been Arn Anderson. And
Hmm.
then there was no negative reaction or I didn't sense any kind of obviously with that incident, you carry that around and don't forget it. But I didn't get any kind of like, nah, you don't want to do that. But I was trying to gauge, figuring if does he have heat or something? He hasn't been back. But the writers actually thought it was a really good idea, but they have to also pick the hill to die on as well. Unless you're a full-time advocate for a talent, if you just kind of willy-nilly bring it up and they turn it down, you kind of use up some of your quota for pitching to Vince. So I understood that as well.
Were you aware of his health at the time? Because I don't even think he wrestled again until 2007 after the leg break. So I think at that point he was mobile. He was doing a commissioner thing for that Australian WWA pay-per-view group who were doing like a series of, I wouldn't say a series of one-off events, but they were doing limited touring for a couple of years, 2002,
And I
2003.
believe was the guy who promoted it, right?
Yeah, and it was just based all ex-WCW talent and whatever indies were left over. So did you know at the time that Sid was mobile or thought he could wrestle again, or was this just purely you just, from what you remembered from years gone by, you thought he'd be a good fit?
Well, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know how long the leg break. I mean, that definitely from the looks of it, it would take a long time to heal from. But mobility wasn't the part that got Sid over and would have gotten him over in that angle. It was his charisma. It was the interaction. It was the let's see what these three crazy people are up to this week type thing. It would actually hopefully have been the easiest money he's ever made.
On that basis, not that, I mean, this is a terrible switch around to what we're, segue is the word I was trying to think of. Segue to what we're going to be talking about for the the rest of this show. So, Raven's Nest, ECW. It was Extreme Championship Wrestling this time. I had to think about that for a second then. So we're going to get to the debut of the Raven character of ECW. This was in January 1995. But you brought something to my attention previously that we'll get to in a short while, that you were actually dressing up. Was this your probably your first imitation, sort of a run of imitation characters where you're, Stevie the Body and Stevie Flamingo, if I can say that. We'll address that in a short while. But at first, we're going to get to Scott Levy, Raven, the person. When was your first time meeting Scott?
I think it was not long before that debut where I introduced Raven, probably maybe 2 to 4 weeks before that, possibly. I know it was, like you said, January 1995 was the debut of Raven, and then, like, throughout late 94, it was first Stevie the Body, then Stevie Flamingo, then Stevie Polo, sequential order of his characters throughout his early career as a wrestler, and then Paul had come up to me and not pitched. I mean, I'm not gonna say no. This is my first push ever. And he talked about that and he said, you're gonna meet him and everything. I had no idea about his personality, the way he was. That was a little bit of a like a not a culture shock, but a personality shock that I was so shy and I was so withdrawn and scared of my own shadow and an actual clueless putz. And then meeting a guy that seemingly had it all together and had such a mind for the business, it was far above at first my understanding of trying to get a read on him or everything. But now, over 30 some years later, it's still hard to get a read of him when I'm around him. So that wasn't such a big change. But I remember being incredibly nervous and not having a clue about how what to do, when to do it, when not to do it. I just know I was trying to bump and sell, and I had gotten a reputation from people like Shane Douglas and everybody I had worked up to that point to say, this guy can bump, he can sell, he can put people over. And that probably was part of the reason that they put me with Raven, if not the sole reason, to protect that new character from doing jobs. And that's essentially where it started. But yeah, I didn't get a feel or there wasn't exactly chemistry personally, and there never had been up for the entire working relationship. For whatever magic, we'll get into more detail, whatever magic you saw in the ring, outside the ring, we were two completely different people because we were two completely different parts of our lives. I was a Philly kid that really just kind of drove around indies and tried to work for free, for like 3 years before I came back to ECW. And Raven had worked territories. He was one of the last people to really go throughout almost every territory in the country, if not throughout the world.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know he was in Portland for a while because he's
Memphis too.
yeah, Memphis, Florida, I believe he worked.
Florida, yeah, I think he started in Florida before going to Portland. I'm not sure because he lived in Florida. His family was down there.
Now, first, I know you said it's sort of tough to get a read on him, but first impressions of, I won't use Raven, I'll use his real name, Scott Levy. How, I suppose as a really green kid at the time still, because you're only in the business maybe a couple of years, maybe 3, I think at this point. No, I'm sorry, 3 and a bit. So you're getting a bit of experience, but is this the first time you've ever worked with somebody who is supposedly, a mind for the business and has got like that Booker's mentality or that creative streak? And who's pitching stuff? Is he even pitching stuff to you, or do you passively watching him work in that sense?
Well, you work around Paul Heyman, you work around everybody that's backstage at ECW. You're going to get exposed to people that have great minds, and you're not going to be able to understand it. You're going to feel like you're in deep water. That's why I've said in past episodes, James, that the young people that are in WWE, AEW, TNA, and are able to be mature enough and have enough like clarity and perspective to literally handle that moment. Like I was on TV in my early 20s, but it was still very local, underground, Fridays at 2 a.m. It was kind of like nobody knew about it. So we could and it wasn't live. So Paulie could edit out the weaknesses that I had and the mistakes I made. But meeting Scott Levy, meeting Raven, kind of one and the same at that point, was very intimidating. And Scotty he gives off that vibe of trying to kind of be a little aloof or off-putting, or he's a creative genius. They're not normal people. So, and I wasn't aware of any of this. The kid who literally grew up 10 minutes from the ECW arena, not exposed to a whole lot of anything. And then Raven with the world experience in wrestling, and of course, the partying and other things, and a lot more of an extrovert to my introvert. So right off the bat, I was just, I'm trying to be friendly. I'm trying to relate to him. And there's no relating to anybody, understandably so. A kid and literally a man trying to kind of like find common ground, which was actually in the ring and wrestling where it counted.
Did Paul Heyman give Raven full creative leeway for his original ideas and angles and sort of the introduction? Where was the ratio, the percentage of whose idea was what there?
I think Raven had almost full creative control. I think a lot of people in ECW had almost full creative control to pitch ideas or come to Paul with certain ideas. I don't think Raven went out there and just did it. Paulie probably a couple times would just say, when he finally started to trust Raven and Dreamer and other people would say, surprise me. Because they know, he wanted to watch it as a fan, gauge the reaction without any kind of preconceived notion. that's where Paul's really smart. He knows when to produce and he knows, when to produce, handhold. Then he knows when I can sit back like a fan. Raven, I believe from day one, he knew that Raven had it in him to do that. He was also, let's go back a little bit, when he was Johnny Polo. Vince wanted him to be an agent. Vince wanted him to be a writer. Vince wanted him to be creative. That's the kind of mind that Scotty had and still has to this day. I believe, he still has. We did a clip where we talked about, his kind of like from taking concussions or whatever from so much in the business, but he still has a great mind for it. So if Vince McMahon at that time was willing to let a young Scott Levy be on the creative team or be in the creative process at all, I think Paulie was definitely aware of that. Because I don't even know if Paul was working with Vince back then. So maybe Vince said, this kid's smart. You can work with him.
What was the relationship between Paul Heyman and Scott? Did you, because I think they were in WCW together. Don't know if they were anywhere else together, maybe Memphis at the time, I don't know. But I mean, that's a heck of a thing to, and we'll get to this later as well, it's a heck of a thing to bring in someone who has been portrayed or portrayed themselves on television as one thing for so many years and then do such a 180 character-wise to, not a mute, but, dark, whispering, brooding kind of character. So there must be a lot of trust for Heyman to bring in Scott and then sort of give the green light for the Raven character.
I may be quoting wrong or paraphrasing with this, but I do recall that Scotty and Paul had a conversation, or might have been multiple ones, where Paul might have referenced it in an interview. I'm not quite sure exactly where it comes from, but Paul was talking about how there's a little bit of Raven in me. There's a little bit of Raven in other people. Yeah, I think he understood the character. Plus, it was the land of misfit toys, which the character Raven would fit in perfectly. The character Stevie Richards would fit in even better. There's no bigger misfit on an island than me with my awkwardness. But with that being said, Paul could relate to how now Scotty didn't come in and go, all right, sit back and watch and shut up. I'm going to go out there and do. He gave Paul a clue about what the character was going to be. And there was definitely check-ins. There was definitely pitches. There was definitely like brainstorming. But I believe Paul knew like it had to be a 180. Why would you bring the same character into a place where it's never going to get over? It's only going to get the kind of heat I got at first before people were like, we'd like to see him get beat up, but this guy's cool. Then it is, why is this cool guy with this clueless putts? There was so much dynamic there. Now, Raven, I believe, did not pitch me because they didn't know me from anybody. That's a Paul saying, we're going to pair you with this kid. This is what we're going to do. And of course, protect you from ever bumping, doing jobs and all that stuff. You'll be protected. And we know that formula works because it worked in The Right to Censor. It's almost the same exact formula.
We'll actually get to the pitching of you being part of this in a bit more in depth. Were there any ideas early on that you heard that Raven had come up with at the time that never saw the light of day? As far as, you and Tommy Dreamer and the whole Beulah thing, we'll get to her as well, of course. But are there any ideas? Okay, so there's something I've heard about Raven or Scott is that he will come up with a great idea and then he will somehow talk himself out of that idea by the end of the thought process that he's gone through.
Well, that's the scientific process. It's not within your scope as a scientist, or in this case, a creative scientist, to basically try to gaslight yourself, for lack of a better term, to say this is a great idea. In other words, he went through the scientific method of trying to disprove his theory. And then if you get to the end of it and it's still a good idea, to me, that becomes a great idea because it's undergone every objection overcome, every bit of scrutiny. And as wrestlers, even though we can tend to be egomaniacs and narcissists and try to convince ourselves of certain things, we are also our harshest critics. And for Scotty, before he even brings an idea, and like I said, I'm just speculating on this part, but I've seen him do that. Like you said, try to talk himself out of it. When you're at the end of that and it's still a solid idea, then you can overcome the objections of management of the booker, of other people. And, he's kind of setting himself up to sell the idea. And then, like I said, he knows what's my hill to die on. That doesn't leave you just because you're in ECW and it's kind of more free flowing. You still are kind of like, okay, you got PTSD from WCW and other places where if I get 5 minutes of Dusty's time, I got to make it count. And that's a great way to be. So yeah, I wouldn't doubt that he did that. We do it in our pre-production, post-production all the time.
What was his best creative idea? This doesn't necessarily need to be in this time frame, but the best idea that he ever came out with that you remember.
Dude, you know what the great part about that is? Just like we talked about with the 5-star matches. I put up 11 or 12, but there's tons more. Raven has so many great ideas. And we talked about Sid. This is a dude that should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Fame, WWE. That's my personal biased opinion, but he's contributed a lot and kind of carried an entire company for a while, if you ask me, with ECW. Um, his best idea, I would say, would be, man, that's a hard one. It got me stumped. Because it's all everything he ever did, from creating me, from training me, from bringing me along and making me the worker I was towards the end of that, then the meanie and utilizing the meanie, utilizing Nova, and that was really his strength. Let's say this, not one idea, but Raven to be able to take what we called the dog and pony show and give it some level of legitimacy and also bring everybody up and get everybody over in their own little niche of character. And then you talk about Tyler Fullington, he got a 5, 6-year-old kid to get over Lori. Then there was people that were kind of floating around like Sandman, Dreamer. You look at Shane Douglas and other people that got a whole new coat of paint, a whole new layer in their character because of just interacting with Raven. So his best idea was creating the Raven character itself, because so many people benefited from the creation of that character and the evolution, more importantly, of the character and everybody in the orbit that surrounded it.
Just one more thing, I wrote it in the format, but I hope you picked up on it. Did you know that Scott had actually approached Jim Cornette to do the Raven character and smoke him out in wrestling first? And Jim apparently simply just didn't understand it, and it never got off the ground in Cornette's world.
Well, I saw the interview that you're talking about. I wasn't aware of it as, a conversation with Raven or Paul or Cornette or anybody. But I will say this, that was probably the Raven character was almost too good and too, how should I say?
Advanced?
Too advanced, too intellectually hardcore, to use an ECW term. And Cornette and Vince McMahon didn't understand it. When Vince McMahon doesn't understand, that's why Raven was on Heat. And for some reason, that's why I never understood. Vince was good at doing business, but then he would let his personal feelings or annoyance with certain talent get in the way of good business. And Raven was a prime example of that, which is weird because he co-hosted Primetime or a couple other shows with Vince. He was on the creative team. I mean, you would think that Vince would be happy that Raven's trying to make the most out of his character, but Cornette, I knew wouldn't understand it. The only person in the world at that time that would even if he didn't understand it, would let it go and see and test it through the crowd would be Paul Heyman.
All American, I think he co-hosted. I don't know if he co-hosted.
That's one of the secondary shows on Saturday.
Yeah. Saturday Morning Slam? No, that wasn't it. What was the one with Todd Pettengill, which was like the morning show in 93, 94?
Had Superstars, and then it evolved into some. They've rebranded that so many times, but I remember him and Vince were like outside.
Mania. WWF Mania.
And I think Raven was the producer for that show. I think he had background, control over that to some degree.
Yeah, when I tried to interview him and brought Johnny Polo straight, he's like, don't want to talk about it. All right.
It's fascinating because the Johnny Polo character in WWF at the time, and the fact that he wanted to still be a full-time wrestler, that's what I believe he probably had in the back of his mind and somewhere deep inside, based on his life experiences. But I believe he knew he needed to go away and he needed to do that 180 and he wanted to leave. I think Smoky Mountain would have been in his mind, and I'm just speaking for him, because Smoky Mountain was still kind of half involved with WWE at the time, that he thought he can go there and go back to WWF at the, for a run as Raven.
Now we're going to get to the debut of Raven and ECW. We've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. Before you yourself formally introduce Raven to the ECW TV show and to the fans, you start wrestling under different names to tease his debut: Stevie the Body, Stevie Flamingo, Stevie Polo. And then, I didn't write the date down, but I think it was like January 7th or thereabouts. It was early January. You're the one to introduce Johnny Polo into ECW as Raven on screen, and you were with Raven, the original members of Raven's Nest. Now, before we started recording and I was rushing around trying to do the scripts, I skipped through about 4 months worth of ECW television. And I think the most interesting thing is that he's introduced and then he's not at the events for about 6 weeks, and neither are you. So it's all backstage vignettes where he's swinging on a swing or in the schoolyard or in the boiler room, just doing, the typical, now typical Raven style promo of brooding, quiet, maybe not overly intellectual, but more intellectual than anything else that had been on television, I'm sure, at that point, or for the most part. So, how did you feel about being the one to bring Raven about and have that association with him right off the bat? And I wanted to put this to you as well. I know I said this earlier. Paul Heyman didn't pitch you. You were going to do whatever he said. But how did you feel about being basically Raven's second?
Well, at the time, you always want to try to be cool at a young age and do cool stuff. I wasn't immune to that, by the way. I couldn't do the flippity flop or the topes or reverse hurricanranas and any of that stuff, or I would have done it. Trust me, back then, I would have shown off and had no psychology. Thank God I wasn't athletic. And I think Paul started to see the fans turn on me. I would team up with people like JT Smith, Hack Myers, other people, and then the people started to turn on me for whatever reason, and Paul went with it. And that was the amazing part, because I literally lived 10 minutes from the building, and I was a hometown boy, and they hated me. So Paul saw a strength in that, and I think he explained to me, because I'm a young kid, I'm trying to get people to at least, like me. Nobody wants to be hated at that point. So I remember being a little down about it, and he's like, "You don't understand. This is great." And I was like, "Wow." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that does make a little bit of sense," even though your ego kind of fights inside for that. So when Raven came in and they said, "You're gonna be his second, and it's gonna be great," and Paul said, "You're gonna be doing a lot of the talking. You better step up your promos." So that first promo where I introduced him, you watch it, I'm nervous, and Joey Styles was very good to me before and even during that he was trying to bring it back, because I was kinda going off off the reservation. I was so nervous until finally I kinda grabbed his lapels, and he literally said, I think something like, "Dude, you're taking way too much time in this promo." And I said something, and I brought him out. He came out, and then the rest was history, but I was a nervous wreck. I'm nervous before these shows. You're on camera. You have a camera in your face with a microphone or anything. Anybody's going to be nervous. But that first thing gave me the foundation and the confidence. Plus, I knew, okay, there's not going to be many live ones, hopefully. We had the vignettes coming up. At least I can get some reps in and get a little bit better. And dude, I practiced, and I recommend everybody do this. Punch a balloon or a string to work on your punches, and do your promos in the mirror each and every day. Multiple. Do them between sets at the gym, anywhere. You have to levels, inflection, eyes, looking away, looking at it's all reps, reps, and reps.
So that was your first real proper promo in ECW, was it?
Oh God, yeah. And they put me out in front of the crowd. And that's what I loved about it. And I kind of hate it today, but I understand it. I wouldn't say hate. I just kind of feel bad for the talent, because you're literally put out there to succeed or fail. There's no gray area. You're put out there and really thrown to the lions. But it sharpens you so you might screw up a couple times here and there, but man, you grow so much quicker as a promo, as a talent in the ring, having psychology. There's no other business where you need to make the mistakes to get better. That's the only way you can expose them and then fix them. And
When
damn, I was exposed that no.
when I was going to ask you, right, because I said, oh, I sent you that video, and you just wrote back, ugh. Was that the story you were just saying, just because you were just so nervous? It's just a bad memory.
Well, I mean, everybody loves Shane Douglas loves the mullet. The mullet, the mullet. He wants it to come back. And I will say, if someone can give me enough money, right after that, I'd shave my head and have short hair. But that would be the mullet has to come back. Leave a comment below. You want the mullet to come back?
That was an outrageous mullet as well. Then I mean, God,
Dude, the cage match. It was afro in the front, party in the back. It was brutal.
Dude, it was a different kind of party at the front and a party at the back. It was a party in your mouth.
Wasn't invited to.
You hosted it, at least. You were hosting several parties on your head.
Wasn't even invited to my own party. That's how much of an idiot I look.
Let's move on. We sort of... Okay, did Paul Heyman ever use the word lackey as pitching to you that you were going to be Raven's second?
No, it was Raven. Raven called me his lackey. Even on TV, I believe he did. Or no, actually, Joey, he had the commentator say it. Whatever Raven, this is how smart he is. To show, don't tell. Let the audience decide. Let commentary speculate and interpret. Paulie never said that. Paulie knew that if I could pull this character off, which I believe I did, I would have, and Raven explained it, you were going to have more heat than me. Because you know what happens is, this was when the Daisy Dukes and a half shirt, I don't know if you're going to bring up the question. I resisted it at first, as any, quote, normal person would. But in the vein of professional wrestling and where the dichotomy of Raven and Richards, him looking cool, wearing cool shirts that are full length, wearing jorts that are down to his knees, and then me doing the exact opposite. This was a 100,000% Raven idea. And Raven explained, you will have more heat than anybody in this company. And guess what happens when you get more heat? When we wrestle, you're always going to get the pin. You're going to beat everybody, and it's going to piss everybody off. And he goes, trust me, you're going to be most over heel in this company. And I knew with his help and guidance, tutelage and all that stuff, it was going to happen. I had full faith in that. They already hated me. They already hated me when I presented myself as the hometown kid that grew up 10 minutes away. So what, we only have one place to go.
Well, the hometown boy, mullet, lackey. Yeah. I think you hit the triumvirate there on that one.
Checked off five-star clueless putts right there.
How did you feel about being pushed around by Raven, and did he ever take it too far?
No, he didn't take it too far. WCW gave me some slaps that were pretty hard. That was a little bit, he got a little far there, but I understood. And it was live TV and pay-per-view. Early on, no, but we rehearsed as far as him telling me, hey, let's do this, or this. Just 3 to 4 bullet points. Incredibly nervous. But for everything I thought of, okay, well, I got to know what's coming so I can react. And him explaining that's not a reaction then. We just have to do it. So there were some things where the blueprint was laid out, and especially he goes, I'm going to abuse you. And he goes, when I abuse you, they're going to like it. But at the same time, you're getting the pins. We're winning the tag belts. We're winning this match. You're talking more. You're getting yourself over. And he goes, and if the day ever comes when they want you to fight back and you do fight back, you're going to be over as a babyface. He was absolutely right. Maybe he was a time traveler too.
Maybe he was. Maybe he borrowed Hulk Hogan's Stargate. Gotti was talented enough that although the Johnny Polo character from the WWF was acknowledged, the ECW faithful almost immediately accepted the character switch, which I find unbelievable because that's the toughest crowd in the world. There was the odd chant.
I have to stop you with that. They didn't automatically. They were chanting Johnny Polo. They were chanting. They also chanted it later on to try to get under his skin or something like that. But no, it might seem instantaneous because it wasn't, say, a month, 2 months, 3 months. The ECW fans, though, they're like the NXT fans. The NXT fans want any talent that comes out there to succeed. They know they have a part in getting the talent over. If you watch NXT, they don't really crap on a lot of talent. They're very encouraging and they want and also that's a false positive when they go up to the main roster. The ECW fans tempered their own enthusiasm to get a talent over with, if it sucks, we're going to let you know about that. With the Raven character, I think they knew right away, wow, this is something different. Let's sit back and see what happens. That's what I feel. They exhibited something that wrestling fans don't a whole lot, patience with the growth of a character.
One more thing, we're going to move on to Tommy Dreamer in a second, but one more thing I wanted to say was that, the Raven character was as up-to-date, zeitgeist as you could possibly get in the wrestling business at that time. I also want to make mention that, MTV and stuff like that was still king and, sort of driving the tastes of the youth, I guess. I mean, how old do I say when I say it that way? But one thing is that Raven's finisher at the time, or one of his finishers, was a loaded boot from, I think, 68? How can he have, like, the oldest, the oldest, hokiest wrestling finisher in wrestling at the time?
Well, he also wanted to do the Mr. Wrestling knee lift. He started doing that, but he wanted that as a finish. Yeah.
Wow.
Scotty, you have to remember, Scotty was a fan of old-time Florida, Memphis, Portland. He knew ECW had gone so far over this way, kind of like the Right to Censor stuff. It had gone so far over there and desensitized the crowd that nothing could impress them after a while. So he went back to the old school Memphis stuff. So the loaded boot, which basically, they did the story like one leg is longer than the other, so he had a special sole, so he had to do it that way. I think Scotty, and I know Scotty for a fact, loves a challenge. He's a worker and he likes working smart, not hard. But when it comes to this, the challenge in itself is to make a crowd that thinks they're so further evolved and beyond the old school Memphis stuff that he can get them to react to the old Memphis stuff without even knowing it. And that's it. He, just like the Clueless Putz character, which he created. I created it when I was born, but he created the look and the promos. He knew that if I just offer up something different, if I just do this, and as Bin Hameen would say, commit to the bit, that they will believe it. Think about the DDT. The DDT, who would ever have thought that anybody would get over with the DDT anywhere near as much as Jake Roberts, which he was a big fan of Jake. And it did. And it was called what's it called?
I thought it was the even flow at one point.
Even flow is what they called it, I think, in WCW, but then they called it the Raven Effect, I believe, in ECW. God, I don't even know. I was right there. But we're going to do a top 5 DDTs in wrestling history for a Smartboard segment in a dedicated video. By the way, I want to let everybody know, dedicated Smartboard segments are coming. Videos on their own besides these full episodes where we have a whiteboard coming up later on the Dreamer chair shot to Raven, chair shot heard around the world. We are adding here to the Stevie Richards Show dedicated breakdowns and analysis like the old channel.
So with Tommy Dreamer, let's get to the Raven vignettes, boiler room, play park, swing, school classroom, etc. Talking about being an outcast, etc. We don't need to go through that. But then it would take some 6 weeks of anything of substance to actually happen, where Tommy and Raven, with you there, in fact, as well, with Joey Styles in the exact same position outside the ring where the first promo was 6 weeks earlier or so, finally face off. The real reason for this is, I don't know if it's the real reason, but Tommy Dreamer was actually in Japan doing a tour for all Japan at the time, so that's why he wasn't around for the first month. When Raven debuted in ECW, Tommy Dreamer would immediately set up as his enemy, and then let's go before that then. I know I'm rambling slightly, I'm sorry, I sort of lost my train of thought, but Tommy Dreamer had been making appearances for Eastern Championship Wrestling as far back as autumn of 1993, when the company was still associated with the NWA. And it took a number of months for Tommy to be accepted by the ECW faithful, and they would chant, you know, sarcastically, he's hardcore, that kind of thing, when he was dressed as a Chippendale. Why did Paul Heyman stick with him for so long in that sense? Because he was trying to be a babyface. He was presenting himself like a sort of stripper. And it seemed to take months for Tommy to sort of work out what he needed to be. And it sort of surprises me that Paul Heyman kept lumping him in with the Sandman, and then, you know, kept pushing him to the main event. So clearly, I mean, Heyman must have seen something in Tommy. Was it the New York connection? Who knows?
Well, yeah, TD Madison, the $1 billion baby. I actually said in WWE on a promo, stop being a $1 billion baby, Tommy. Why do you stick with him? I mean, why does any booker stick with any talent? Why would Paul stick with me? Why would he stick with Raven? Why would he give Raven a chance? Why in this whole company would all these misfits be given a chance at all? You could literally eliminate everybody from ECW and not have a company. But with Tommy, I think they had worked for the Savaldis, and obviously there's a New York connection, but Tommy had worked for the Savaldi promotion. I think Paul did, Taz did. There was a bunch of people that worked up in those on the indies. But what I believe that it is, and for people that don't know, what you see on TV with a lot of wrestling characters, even myself or anybody else, I guarantee you outside the ring, they're much more interesting, engaging. Sometimes just people, it doesn't translate on the screen with the character that they're playing. Tommy was playing a pandering babyface character, which the ECW fans would instantly turn on. I might have been doing that at first because I'm a hometown boy and they're like, ah, screw you. But Paul stuck with Tommy because number one, he knew him personally and he knew the personality that Tommy could have. Also, Tommy was in great shape. He was a big dude. He was the All-American guy, but also deep down, he probably was a bit of a heel, a little bit of an edge to him that didn't show up in TV because he didn't have the right person to pair up against to make him stand out. Sandman was the first one. Then when he got caned and said, thank you, sir, may I have another? That was the beginning of the innovator of violence. Then when you're the innovator of violence, you just need to come up with things to do violently. The Raven character gave him another layer to his character, a background story. Now we got to know who Tommy Dreamer was and why he is the way he is. Now, when I heard this whole thing, even at my young age, I said, well, they hate Tommy for being the All-American boy. Aren't they going to hate him for being the All-American boy that was with the beautiful woman? And then this goth person that hung out on the South Lawn at Central High School, shout out to people back in Philly, all the goths, you had them in your high school too. You know, they would turn on Dreamer and go with the underdog. I thought that was a real chance of that happening. But what did he do? Tommy and Raven worked together. They protected each other. Paul oversaw it and became kind of the filter, like, you know, and tried to figure out what works and what doesn't. And this thing between Dreamer, Raven, you include Paul, and then myself and other people brought in to keep the whole universe expanding and growing. We had months and months and months kind of booked in advance for this. So long story short, for your initial question, he stuck with Tommy because he saw something in him, much like he did me, Raven, the Eliminators, Taz, anybody that came through there and stayed for any point of time, Meanie, Nova, everybody.
Yeah, that's not to denigrate Tommy. But, you would think, like, a booker by that point, it's like, man, it's been 6 months, he's just not catching on, the fans are rejecting him. But, obviously Heyman saw something in Tommy that maybe even Tommy didn't see in himself at that point. So he was still wearing the braces. You call them suspended. Yeah. Sorry, you call them suspenders. We call them braces. You know the deal.
Yeah.
The Chip and Dale thing, yeah.
But here's the other thing about that, okay? 6 months, he's not getting over. That's the problem with today's wrestling. It's like the writers coming up to the talent and say, give us ideas. Well, what the hell is your job? Why don't you take some bumps for me? That's kind of the answer that the writers would get sometimes. But Paul knew, if he's not getting over, what am I doing wrong? That's the difference back then. The buck always stopped with the booker who put people on TV. And to be honest with you, I don't think there was a big payroll at ECW, and the people that came in to pay their dues and do what they needed to do. And Tommy eventually was part of the office merchandising. He was a loyal soldier. So Paul needed people on his side, people that were loyal, people that weren't just going to go to WCW and WWF at the time. And Dreamer was one of those people.
I'm going to get back to Dreamer in a second. So Johnny Hotbody and Tony Stetson, the Broad Street Bullies, were joined about 6 weeks. Were they your trainers as well?
2 of them, yeah.
They joined 6 weeks after Raven showed up, and then you two formed the Raven's Nest and remained with the group for about 6 weeks. There's a promo of you and Raven that I want to bring up because this leads into Tommy Dreamer. Tommy turned up, confronted Raven during this interview, and then he leaves again. He comes back later in the episode, but then you said that you found a couple of guys, referring to Johnny and Tony, that if they could kick my butt, they could kick Tommy Dreamer's butt. And Joey Styles says, Boy Scouts, right? And you say, definitely. Great comic timing. Like, your face didn't even know Joey was going to say that, but you didn't even let on. You were just agreeing with him and carried on. And that was such subtle humour. I had that interview on a Best of ECW Early Years tape that I think was only maybe released in the UK or Europe or something like that. So I saw that 100 times, and I thought that was a great delivery to a line. And it seemed completely, non-scripted.
You want to hear the truth about that? I remember that promo. And Joey,
you're gonna bum me out now, aren't you?
I'm not going to bum you out. It's a happenstance. But Joey did as much. Joey Styles is still one of my closest friends to this day, a man that I love, like a brother. This guy did as much to get me and other talents over than anybody. Not only with one person commentary, which cannot be overlooked, that one guy is commentating and able to carry a show in a pay-per-view, but to actually be the vessel, the spiritual vessel of the fan watching at home or in the crowd and saying what they're thinking about me or anybody that's standing next to him. Hopefully I'm not going to ruin this for you. I didn't hear what he said.
No.
I didn't hear what he said, but that's what a clueless putz would do. You would ignore. That person would ignore. I would ignore what he said. So everything was just like, definitely. It's like the match I did with Johnny Grunge where I had to wear the dress. And then anytime Jason was around, Joey would break out in a rash. Jason, the sexiest man on earth. And then the funny part is, like, Jason was like, hey, if you lose the match, Stevie, do you mind if I wear the dress? And I was like, I did the Ralph Farley from Three's Company. I went, no, I don't mind at all. And Joey's like scratching, and we're like, are you okay? And he's like, no.
You and dresses, dude.
What's that?
I said you and dresses.
Jeez, if I only knew.
If you only knew. Who had that as a theme?
Yes, I forget. You think you know me? Edge.
That's it. It's Edge. Yeah, I've got you.
We're gonna idea just for saying the words.
Damn it! Damn it! Oh my God! I've got to tell you this. Our now mutual friend Chris, he texted me a couple of days ago, and Will Ospreay has been copyright striked by AEW.
He texted me too. He let me know about that.
Amazing. Amazing.
Put it up right here. Give us the fist bump.
Yeah. Ooh, hang on.
There you go.
I've got two cameras there. I've got to wave my hand around.
The copyright strike shield.
Oh my God! I tell you. Anyway,
It was
Boy Scouts.
one of his matches. That would make it even better.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was him posting it on his own Twitter that he'd amazing. So, getting back to you, Tommy and Raven, this is their first physical confrontation, but later on in that same episode, you wrestle Tommy Dreamer. He defeats you via two-handed thrust to the balls, which, keep in mind, everybody, for people who don't know, ECW had no rules. So, or very few rules anyway, no disqualifications, unless Bill Alfonso was refereeing, of course. So, people always love this question, and you've known him for many, many years. But back in 94, 95, what's Tommy Dreamer like to work with?
Absolute pleasure. Hey, to this day, if we stepped in the ring today, we had a match, I think back in 2016 in Rome, Georgia. It's up on my YouTube channel if you check it out on Stevie Richards Fitness. But one of the best guys to work, one of the best guys in the business, one of the most just real dudes that you'll ever meet. You know, I don't know what he's like now. We haven't spoken or had any interaction in many, many years, but Tommy is one of the people that coached me, helped me navigate some of the political orders. I was literally a clueless putz, not only in the ring, but in life. And Tommy really did mentor me in a lot of ways and clue me into things and smart me up to certain things in a very nice way and have me try to correct certain behavior that in the normal world is fine, but in the wrestling world will get you a ton of heat. So I learned a lot of lessons from him, but in the ring, and we wrestled, my God, between ECW, WWE, and then we didn't wrestle in TNA, but we teamed up. But just between ECW and WWE, we must have wrestled 300 times if I'm being conservative. And each and every time has been just easy. You can work Tommy Dreamer 7 days a week and have a very, very long career. And that, I think that there, and obviously he's an Impact. He's on the management. I don't know what his exact job is creatively or being an agent, but he's also an on-camera person. And now he's facilitated in the Busted Open and pivoted that way. Just a great guy. You know, his wife's an even better person, Beulah. I love her to death. I know you're going to ask next about her, but, you know, two of my favorite people in the business.
Well, I know in the format run, I've done that, but I skipped out Stevie's crazy outfits. And I know we talked about this in WSI. I know you briefly mentioned it beforehand, but everybody loves these outfits. Especially, I think they're best highlighted in the WCW promo shot of dancing Stevie Richards with a when you're doing that kind of thing at the same time. But
there is.
Don't throw your back out again. I know you with the Hulkamania poses.
I'm staying on this plane here. When I go outside into the Hogan Stargates territory, that's when it starts to I get in trouble.
He transcends time and space. Does Hulk Hogan?
Brother, I remember when I was there with that Stevie Richards promo. I said, "This guy's got it. He's got it." And then I called up Vince.
Back in the 1860s.
It might have took him. You know, might have took him 5 years to sign him, but it was based off of what I said.
Oh, my goodness me. Bless Hogan. He's so charming.
Chuck Berry, you have to hear this new sound. Listen.
You know, he wrote Back to the Future as well. He went up to Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd and said, "Brothers, I've got experience, right, going back and forth in Stargates and time. Why don't you write a movie on, you know, that film I've never seen?"
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems to be pretty popular amongst comments. Also, I heard that Hulk Hogan had Eric Stoltz fired and got Michael and talked to the producers of Family Ties and made it all come together.
We never got Family Ties over here. We never got Family Ties. I
what it was good for the 80s sitcoms.
Do you know what I used to watch Michael J. Fox in? And this is a forgotten sitcom, Spin City. I really liked that back in the day.
I remember that.
There we go.
That was like Spin City was like a spin-off of Kids in the Hall because a lot of the Kids in the Hall actors were in that, like David Foley, I believe his name was, and a bunch of other people.
I know the guy's name. I don't remember that. I'm not sure we got that one either. We only got the cream of the, well, whatever they could buy for cheap, I guess.
Yeah, we can debate that.
We could do. Right, we'll move back to Stevie's crazy outfits. So yeah, Raven's outfits, of course, with the cut-off band t-shirts and jorts, which I'm sort of, in my own pathetic way, trying to, not with the jorts, but wearing a band t-shirt for this one, even though it isn't grunge. And against all odds, somehow that would just become an iconic style of like wrestling outfit. So it wouldn't be, I mean, it was aped by every single indie wrestler for, I think, decades. But also, Justin Credible would wear that kind of outfit. There were some people in WWE, Kevin Owens, for goodness sake, still does. Bret Hart in the NWO, and you. You would, in your own, as you keep describing yourself character-wise, Clueless Putzway would try and ape the Raven outfit of jeans and t-shirts, but it didn't quite look the same when you wore it that Raven did it. So whose idea was it to have a version of Raven's, but a slightly more, dancing in the blue oyster kind of version?
1,000,000% Raven. And I resisted it like any other person and never stepped in the business and never understood standing out. But like I had said in our interview, Raven presented it to me and said, we have killers, we have tough guys, we have shooters, we have angry people. You will stand out. And he was right. You can't. I'll never look as tough as a Taz. I'll never be as cool or have that kind of charisma like a Shane Douglas or other people in the company or a Raven. But if I go the opposite way, I will stand out. And he explained it to me, as I said before, you will stand out. You will be the biggest heel in the company. You will have the most heat and you will get the pin each and every time and piss these people off. And then when it comes time for someone to finally get their hands on you, people are it's going to be just so over. And he was absolutely right. Now, my outfit was basically going at the time, it was open Kmart, buying jeans, cutting them down, throwing through the dryer 3 times, then going to the buy or die box at the local, it wasn't Hot Topic, it was just a local store, and buying all those shirts that nobody wanted to wear anymore. That's where I got the look. And that was based on Raven's direction. I didn't have any knowledge to have any kind of initiative with that. That was all Raven telling me, go get this, do this, get this, and come out to it was a match on ECW TV where Joey was like, what in the hell? He wanted to say what the F and have it bleeped out, but he said, what in the hell is he wearing? And people reacted. It was like unbelievable. And who would have known years down the line that that would be an over babyface outfit with the BW?
Unbelievable. And you were saying like, oh, I'll never be as cool as so-and-so. And then your name was Big Stevie Cool a couple of years later.
Yeah, don't remind Kevin Nash, but yes.
No. Okay, which of the T-shirts?
Be nice.
I will be nice. T-shirts, what are your... Okay, what T-shirts that you wore, did you notice they got even more heat than usual? Or did you notice any T-shirts?
Striper.
Well,
I had Poison, Striper, Cinderella. What was coming? Striper just did because it was so even far beyond the hairband, because it was a Christian hairband that they just, the demons came out and booed everything that they possibly could about that shirt. It was really just trying to find anything. And then it progressed into, because Meanie had the airbrush, and then I got airbrushed the perfect weapon with my thing on the back. The Lord Stevie with the blue Meanie Bloods. I started doing more airbrush stuff in that sense.
We'll get to the BWO stuff in a future episode. I know we keep saying that, but it's all coming. Don't worry. Who did the airbrushing?
Somebody Meanie knew in South Philly. They did great work. So they initially did the first airbrush of the BWO shirts before the shirts were officially made. So that was Meanie's guy, and they did a great job.
It wasn't the guy who Rob Van Dam would work with, was it? Did he have his own guy for this?
I'm not familiar. The work is similar, but airbrushing is kind of similar no matter what. So I don't know if that was a California guy or because Rob had those airbrushed when he first came in, right? So I would remember with someone close to where he lived, and he brought it to ECW.
I figure so. I figure they weren't the same person, but I'm not saying
he never hired that guy to do anything, because obviously it was in South Philly. The guy could come with the airbrush and just give it to him and exchange whatever. But yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I know it was Meanie's guy. I know that he did mine. I think with Nova with the BWO, but Nova had his own gear maker for the superhero outfit. There was no gear maker backstage. There was no gear maker to kind of find. I didn't need to worry about it, thank God, because I wouldn't know where to start.
What do you know? We actually gear is going to be its own subject in a future episode as well. I keep saying this, I know, but we'll go in depth on where you got your gear and
We
stuff
have
over the years.
about what 100 topics now.
No, about 300. I mean, you've seen that list that I've sent you. It's got to the point that it's embarrassing. But yeah, we've got stuff for about 3 years worth of podcasts easily at this point, and I haven't even come up with anything obvious either. Did you keep any of the t-shirts?
The BWO is in a shadow box right back there with
the old airbrush one.
No, the actual BWO shirt, the blue one.
Okay.
The airbrush is gone forever.
Where did it go?
Have no idea. Didn't sell it, didn't do anything like that. But back then we didn't have any idea. Like, you're not keeping stuff for future reference or posterity or anything like that. You're just trying to survive and try to figure out if, like, this thing's going to grow, or am I going to go to WWF or WCW? We didn't know anything. We didn't know what the market was going to be. I'm old enough. It might have been in the infancy or it wasn't around. I may have predated my wrestling career before there was even eBay. I'm old enough to where Amazon had just started selling books online.
Like 94 or something, maybe?
I had to go to a library and physically look at books to write my term papers.
Did any of the t-shirts you wore amuse Raven? Like, he looked and went, oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was part of it. That was one of the more enjoyable things, trying to pop him, because when you get to be that much and see that much and, you get grizzled no matter what. I'm probably that way a little bit too. But to get him to audibly do his little laugh with the shrug shoulder thing, that was cool. That was a victory, for at least for that day.
Did you like any of the bands you ever wore? Because you're an 80s love song guy. And why not? A fine genre to be in. But, like, Poison, every rose has thorn. That's a love song. I mean, any of the bands that you actually liked that you represented?
Literally, I liked them all. And actually, I think I did have, now that I think about it, REO Speedwagon and Air Supply. I found those shirts as well. This is why I do still to this day love 80s and 80s love songs. When I was at the gym this morning, that's all I was listening to. So, and the Stevie Richards Show, I'm subscribed.
Of course. And click that bell, whatever that means, whatever that does, click it. Do you know, when I used to go to the gym, and very briefly, I used to try and do lifts to as slow as possible, eccentric and concentric or whatever the words are. No, that's not it, is it? On the just incline and decline.
No, that's it. Eccentric and concentric, 2 up, 2 down, or slower. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would listen to James Taylor's greatest hits, because I just thought, what's the most relaxing music I can think of, and it'd be James Taylor, or other than Woodwind, or Brian Eno or something like that.
Did you take a nap on your rest periods, or just?
Yeah, no, I took about a week's rest period in between every set. Which is,
I want to say, have you done any skull crushers lately?
No, I haven't. I haven't done any workouts in a week, so that's not happening. Right, let's move on to the next thing now. What time are we on? Oh, we're on perfect time for once recording one of these darn things, let me tell you. The women of ECW, so there will be ladies introduced to the Raven's Nest soon after. The Pitbulls and Beulah McGillicuddy, I think, were joined on the same week. I didn't get quite that far when I was doing the research into this. And Beulah was in storyline a fat girl in her teenage years who Tommy Dreamer would reject at, I nearly said band camp. Summer camp, excuse me. And this one time at band camp. Now, Beulah was slim and trim and hated Tommy more than anything, and would be shadowing or seconding Raven. Were they dating in storyline, Beulah and Raven? Was it ever explicitly a girlfriend thing?
Well, that's the best part about those things. It leaves the audience, it leaves it up to their imagination. It's kind of like Victoria and myself. We were never together, and never did any, but it was literally, it just up to the fans to decide and speculate, and that keeps them interested. I couldn't even answer that question. I know that Dreamer and Beulah eventually were on camera as a couple when everything kind of went 180 and she was with him, and now they're legitimately together and married with children. So it's crazy world.
Where did Beulah come from?
I have no idea. I really don't. Probably met Raven or Dreamer or both in a social setting, maybe a bar or club. I'm not sure. But I will say this, whoever came up with the name of this beautiful woman with the ugliest name possible, Beulah McGillicuddy, I couldn't think of that name if you paid me $1 million, like off the top of my head. So I don't know. To me, I think that was a Raven. It could have been Paul, but what a great name to not fit the current look, but in your imagination, fit the old look of what she was.
I think Raven came up with the name as well. I don't know if it's like Beulah. I know Beulah was a guy in Ferris Bueller's Day Off as well. But I didn't realise this. I've just checked up on it. She made a one-off appearance in Stampede Wrestling in 1988 as Brian Pillman's sister, and she was dating Pillman at the time.
I had no idea. That's news to me.
So she was, I'm sorry, this is all Wikipedia stuff, but while working as a backup dancer for the singer Prince Hayes, her real name is Trisha Hayes, met baseball player Ron Grant, who introduced her to his friend, professional wrestler Raven. So Raven introduced her. I know she, Penthouse appearance as well.
She also has, from Tom, I don't know if she currently does it or not, but I remember she was really into doing kind of what we do here with video editing and production and stuff like that. So hopefully she's still doing that because she was really this is after ECW and stuff, but she was really into production, video editing, stuff like that. So she's a smart girl. She's such a sweetheart.
What's her rate?
What's her rate?
Yeah.
Chris, edit this out.
Yeah. What's her rate? See, okay. Then all right. You got to keep the staff on the toes, haven't you? So, what's Beulah
with?
Like
Anthony Green, the kid who imitated me for so long with the Green World Order, or anybody like that.
Who? I don't know the story.
One of the most fun matches I ever did, and Anthony Green. He was Autumn something in NXT for a little bit. He had a mustache, old retro type of look. This kid, I wrestled at Beyond Wrestling. He was the leader of the Green World Order. And because his entire gimmick was green stuff, like retro glowy stuff. And we had a match at Beyond Wrestling where I came out initially as right to censor, tried to shut the show down. He brought a Snickers out of his fanny pack. I told this story on the interview. Fed me the Snickers, and I was like, well, what the hell am I doing? What am I saying? What am I wearing? Ran in the back, tore off all the RTC clothes, came back to the BWO thing and had a match with him. This kid, though, after the match, not before, because I would have been way too nervous, showed me a picture in like 2000, 2002 that I took a picture with him when I was in WWE and he was a little kid. That's, to me, those kinds, I wish I was involved in more heartwarming stories like that in my career where things come full circle. So amazing to meet that kid and be able to actually wrestle him. And he's good. He's really good.
Where is he now?
Back and Beyond. He got released from NXT. He's back in the Northeast working indies.
Okay. And what was his name one more time so people can hunt him out?
Anthony Green. Greene.
So, we didn't really ask on this, but your thoughts on Beulah as a person, because just how easy was she to? I mean, I suspect she was more or less sort of clueless as to the wrestling business at the time. So, I mean, how well did she take direction? How well did she integrate herself in the locker room? Because she was involved deeply in a lot of storylines for years in ECW.
Never. I mean, she's a wonderful person, and I believe a wonderful talent, and she played her part perfectly. I never had any cross words or any cross interaction with anybody that I could think of. Completely easy to work with, understood her role, played it up, and that was it. She had so much poise, so much presence, and a professionalism about her while still being disarming and friendly, not being like standoffish, but a professionalism that, in the wild world of ECW, the land of misfit toys, I figured she and Tommy and Raven would be WWF bound in no time whatsoever. They just had an air of like it was about making money. It was about the creative thing. And she never said much, but she carried herself as a true professional.
What did you think when she finally got into the ring and wrestled Fonzie? It was that's the bloodbath one, isn't it?
Oh man. I mean, you just gotta watch it. I mean, when it came time to go, I mean, obviously it's two non-wrestlers in the ring, but I believe for two non-wrestlers in the ring, that they had the fans, they did what they could do the best they could do with it, and it was definitely a bloodbath. It was crazy.
I've interviewed Fonzie a few times, or a couple of times. I spoke to him, or whatever else. Hey, Daddy, gotta call it right down the middle, Daddy. And I don't know what he claimed, but I don't know if he just said he lost like a third of the blood in his body or something like that. Crazy. I don't know what he gigged himself with. I mean, what was it, like a scythe? But I mean, he nearly chopped his head off.
It was time to do business. Sometimes you get a little carried away. Now, he weighed about 120 pounds, so a third of his blood might be accurate.
Yeah, about that
There's
much.
not a whole lot of blood to travel anywhere. But Fonzie's
Bless him.
He's one of the good ones too, and that dude is we talking like early to mid 80s Florida. This dude's been around for like, 40, 50 years.
I think 70s. I think like late 70s he was involved with the business. I know he was, from the Eddie Graham days. He went to Texas for a bit. But yeah,
Well,
no one's...
50 years, almost 50 years.
Yeah. He's great with the fans as well. I saw him with... when I went to Philly, and he was stopping people and just wanted to talk to them and stuff like that. He's a really accessible guy. One more thing.
Fonzie too is sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
The thing with Fonzie too is, and a lot of people, including myself at times during my career, you take it for granted. And Fonzie was not one of those people that ever took it for granted and realized he was living the dream. It was a gift. And as long as he could do it, he was going to enjoy it. And you talk about a guy that radiates fun, positive energy. That's a dude that does.
So, Francine, you are given credit for Francine debuting as Francine that we all know and love today. You are have almost like a positive stalker. She was infatuated with you. She was your fan. How did it come about that Francine was coming into the business, and who sort of decided to inject her straight away into a main storyline?
She was at a local wrestling school, I believe, and we had met there when I went to train. Then Paul, or Tommy, I'm not sure. It might have been Raven too. I'm not sure who kind of found her to bring her in and do that. But you want to talk about a perfect, twist or kind of spin off of the main angle.
I think it was Todd. I think it was Todd himself that actually brought Francine.
But let's not forget, hey, listen, can we make this a clip or a part of something? Because we cannot talk about my career, Raven's career, Francine, Dreamer, even Paul or anybody in ECW without acknowledging Todd Gordon, paving the way and making ECW happen. That was Todd Gordon. Todd Gordon with Eddie Gilbert, then Todd Gordon with Paul Heyman. It definitely needs to be said over and over again. And I suggest everybody go out and buy Todd's book after your two books, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But buy Todd's book. It's an excellent read. He's been promoting it. Another friendly guy at all the conventions, and he's best friends with Fonzie. These guys just kind of gravitate to each other. Him, Fonzie, Sandman, just fun people to be around. But if it's Todd, then I'll take your word for it because I'm not sure about that. But you talk about the main storyline now giving me a girlfriend when I'm a clueless putz. There's one person in the world, like everybody else. You got that one person in the world. Everybody else might think you're an idiot, but this person loves you for who you are. So what does a clueless putz do when he finds the one girl who truly loves him for who he is? Well, he turns on her, of course. he helps he helps her get pile driven with a match against Beulah, and he goes back with Raven. Now I have even more heat. And she goes with the pit bulls. Dude, ECW, say what you will. You want to talk about each and every character, each and every talent, whether it's a wrestler, manager, referee, Paul Heyman on camera, storylines, angles, baby faces, heels. Every single thing had an intention. Every single thing had a purpose. And every single thing, quite frankly, we were actually organically booking as we went along. If we needed to pivot or turn or do something, we'd do it. It was just unintentionally. It was organized chaos where everything made sense and it really had no right to, had no business making sense, but we made it make sense.
With Francine, what I hear, what I can gather is that in the best way, she was one of the guys. It's like whatever you could do to one of the guys, she would take it as well. She consistently wanted to prove herself.
Yeah, but she had her nervousness as anybody who never took, say, a pile driver. That's why we kind of both held their legs while Beulah pile drived her because they were both nervous about protecting her. You know, there's a basic nervousness if you're not sure. And back then, the guardrail spot tells the whole story. Back then, you were almost afraid to even bring up any kind of concern with that. But she did it in a way that was really good. And she's a girl. So the guys want to give her the moves, but the guys also want to take care because the body structure and the composition and the muscle and the skeleton's completely different. And Raven and Dreamer, if she was in there with, I don't know, she did take total elimination, I think, once, didn't she? Yeah, she did from the Eliminators during the six-man tag with myself and the Eliminators versus her and the Pit Bulls. But outside of that, like they took care of her. But it's a rough bump to take when you're literally getting the playground knockover deal, from both sides. But the guys understood too to take care of the women because they're women. We did more man on woman violence than anybody, but how many women got hurt? Lori Follington used to get speared through the table by Rhino. But I'd never heard of any of the girls getting legitimately like seriously injured. And I think the guys took great care to at least try to take care of them to some degree.
With Francine as well, we've got a couple more follow-up things with her. One, she was never afraid to get heat. Two, she could get heat incredibly because, gorgeous woman and everything, and she's with Shane for the majority of her career in ECW, or the best remembered portion of her ECW career, of course. And I was talking on the old podcast I did with Shane. I'm sorry it's over. Couldn't make schedules, mate. I feel like I keep having to apologise because there was so much left uncovered on that one. Yeah. So he said one day he realised Francine got it. And you know how she would do the pantomiming and with Shane and, oh, he's my boyfriend or he's the greatest guy and, like make a bit of a thing with the belt. One day, unsolicited, not planned, she went to one side of the ring, so it's like he took off the robe or whatever he was wearing, the belt's there. And then unsolicited, she goes to one corner of the ring and then she gets on all fours and then she crawls all the way across the ring and then kisses the belt. So just like absolute pandemonium from the fans. And Shane went, that was the day I knew that she got it. And I didn't have to tell her anything else. She got this business.
It's a great place to break through, to have that breakthrough point, especially if you're trying to coach somebody along. Now, I can have confidence and you do take a little bit of your own creative energy to make sure that they're going to do what you need them to do. There's always back of your mind worrying. And for Shane, that was probably the most freeing moment because he probably got more over after that because he could focus and know that Francine's going to carry her weight. Shane's a great teacher. Shane's a great man. He was a teacher, an actual teacher. So he has it in himself. Raven's a great teacher. If it's presented a little bit differently, sometimes not with rainbows and ice cream cones, but it's still teaching nonetheless. Paul's a great teacher. Tommy, you can learn from everybody, but Shane, I know that feeling too on both ends. Raven's relief when I started to get it, and then my relief when I'm with somebody and they're starting to get it. It's a great feeling. It's terrible up until that point. It's very stressful, which you can understand stress right now. It's very stressful, but it's worth it in the end.
We have got two more segments that we're going to talk about here. One is the whiteboard segment we're going to finish this show on, and the one before it that we're going to sit down and talk about. And I want to know all your memories. This is your first major title win, tagging with Raven and winning the ECW tag team titles for the first time. So I that's all I wrote about that. I know nothing of the story behind it and the build up towards it, the backstage build up towards it. So from beginning to end, when did you know you were winning the titles, or the whole story and the build up to it?
This was Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, the building that eventually collapsed off the side of the mountain. This is the same place where it collapsed.
What?
Not that night, but it's gone. Um, that was the building also with the New Jack Dances with Dudley fight in the locker room. This is before that. I'm pretty sure for my memory, it's that. But June 30th, 1995, Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. We did not know. I did not know. Raven might have knew previous to that, but I'm just a kid. And for me, it's better off if I don't know till I get there. I knew before the match that it was going to happen. Um, I will say this: we were wrestling Public Enemy. Teddy, Rocco Rock, both guys are gone. Teddy, rest in peace. He was one of the kindest, easygoing guys to work with, and somebody I used to watch when he wore the mask. I think it was, I forget his name now. Good Lord. The Cheetah Kid. The Cheetah Kid. He used to wrestle as the Cheetah Kid. And I remember when I met him when I was first starting, and I said, "That's the Cheetah Kid," because I was watching tapes and stuff like that. And I, like an idiot, I go, "Hey, man, are you the Cheetah Kid?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't know who that is." I thought, "Oh, I could swear, why is he being this way?" You know? And everybody didn't understand it, kayfabe at the time. So Johnny Grunge, on the other hand, was not a lot of fun to work. Johnny was rough to work. Johnny was not good to me, and he was not nice to me, but he was not good and not nice to a lot of people. Now, he was over, he was charismatic, he could work, but my my thoughts after the fact, way after the fact, when some told me the story, was that Teddy was fine with it. Johnny was not fine with it, especially me getting the pin. That's just my second and third hand knowledge. I believe I pinned Teddy, so it wasn't even it was a moot point, or I was supposed to pin Johnny, ended up pinning Teddy. So, and I believe it was Teddy because he hit the drive by on me. Then something happened, and I kind of like got rolled over on top of him. So we're out there. The gangsters came in and cost them the title. So they were going off to wrestle the gangsters. So I think New Jack hit him with the billy club or something, and then I rolled on top, or he put me on top. So I'm going to talk about the actual match in a second. Post match, 911 comes out because the fans are mad. We're worried they're going to riot. 911 comes out, choke slams myself and Raven, and then we start hearing one more time, one more time. Choke slams me the second time. It gets louder. One more time, one more time. Paulie, I think it was 3, 4, maybe 5. The last one, Paulie puts the mic up in my thing, and he's like, and I'm saying something like, "Buh, buh, buh," and Paulie, to his credit, right on the mark, goes, "Bye, bye, bye, MF." And boom. And they were all real. No need to jump for 911, by the way. You're getting choke slammed whether you want to or not. So
Did he ever let you down easily? Because every chokeslam I've ever seen, he seems to be trying to put you through the mat.
he's throwing you as hard as he can. So the actual match itself, we brawled all over. It was like a 90-10 thing with them beating us up, as it should be with us going over. We went over, and it was one of the most surreal things. That reaction of me sitting on, there's fan cam footage of me smiling, looking at the belt, looking up, and then just like whatever. And then I grab the microphone and I play ring announcer and announce us as the new ECW World Tag Team Champions. And people were booing, and then the 911 thing happens. Um, there was an incredible amount of responsibility that I felt in that instant. And I knew coming back from there that there was people in the locker room that were like, just like the fans. Some of the biggest marks sometimes are in the locker room. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there were people that were unhappy because I didn't deserve to be champion. Where Raven got it, of course he doesn't deserve to be champion because people are going to pay money to see him. He's got to lose it next time. They can't hold on to it. Yet I keep getting the pin. We keep the tag belts. We keep running interference via the pit bulls, which eventually they turn on us and we have an angle going into September 95 for the double dog collar match. It was amazing. And I have to say this, Raven in that moment, that night, it was like a mini childhood dream coming true. I was like, I can't believe someone had enough faith in me to put me over and put me into this position. And I'm incredibly happy, but nervous. Raven had a smile, and I think he kind of saw back to when he started wrestling to say, I remember kind of like a parent and a kid. I remember the Christmas morning feeling, and I'm kind of reliving it through the kid. I could kind of sense that. And he actually said that night, I go, dude, I'm proud of you. You did a really good job tonight. So it was really cool.
Well, I was just going to ask actually as a follow-up, was it a big deal to you? But of course it was. This is your first big title. Is it your first title in like any promotion anywhere?
Anywhere. First, so many first evers. And it wasn't like now you can run the danger of I'm over and now I can do this and I can command a lot of money and this. It wasn't anything like that. I knew I was still a clueless putz, and I knew that every bit of success, every bit of growth, every bit of everything relied on other people with more experience. Raven, Dreamer, Paul, the roster, everybody. Now it's literally the training wheels are off, and I need to really carry my end of the act. I really do now.
Right, so was complaining about losing a title to somebody else a common theme in the ECW locker room? Because I would have thought people would just get it. I mean, it's not like the WWE title in the 90s and, your pay's going to get tripled or something like that. Or did generally just some people just, I don't want to say believe in it too much, but were they just too into it to see that?
Certain talent had to believe in themselves too much. They had to protect their brand. It wasn't called protecting your brand, but they had to be protective. And let's think about this. ECW had the perfect storm of people that did job. Let's say Public Enemy in that, Jim Thorpe match where we went over. Public Enemy lost, but we didn't beat them. The Gangstas came in and cost them the titles, therefore distracting the Public Enemy from chasing us for the belts. Now we can go work with Dreamer and Luna. We can go do these little side quests if you're a video game person like I am. It's a side quest. Public Enemy went on their side quest with the intention that they're going to come back later, sometime later, and re-win the tag belts, whether from us or somebody else. This was just my impression, and this is secondhand information. And also, Johnny Grunge did have a boo-boo face, and sometimes you can't hide it. Johnny didn't have a problem with Raven. Johnny had a problem with maybe me as a person, maybe didn't think I belonged in the business because I was shy, I was introverted, I wasn't cool, I didn't party, whatever it might be. I didn't look the part of a wrestler, which is what got me heat. The way he treated me, the way he talked to me, I got the idea. I knew enough to know. I wasn't that clueless at the time. In the ring, took certain liberties with me, but of course, taking liberties as a babyface on the type of heel I was can be easily masked as beating up the clueless putz. A little too rough here, a little too stiff here. Did I ever give it back to him? sometimes I'd throw the kick and it would just be, I just got to shut him down because he's beating my ass. He's just beating me up. That would be the kind of thing. And I hate to speak ill of that, but it's the truth. And people knew it, and Raven knew it, and other people knew it. But eventually, Johnny, I think when he did the dress match, was the dress match before or after? It was before. I'm sorry. That's where I kind of had the idea that Johnny had some kind of problem with me where he didn't even know me. And then he bullied me in the ring and probably in the locker room a lot with that kind of stuff. But coming back around to it, I think in the end, when we did put them over and they put me through the flaming tables, he was a little bit better towards me than he was then. That's that's just a natural kind of thing where there's a difference. Like, for instance, in House Party 96 against Sabu, he tested me. He tested me, which is necessary. Can you hang? Can you keep up? Can you fight back? Can you take it when you need to take it? Meaning take control of the match and get your stuff in. Are you going to die on me? Are you going to just sit there and sell them? I got to do all the work. Johnny took it a little bit further, and I could tell because he was not trying to teach me anything. He was just trying to eat me up in the ring.
We're going to go from the negative
Can't
to the
imagine
positive.
a clickbait title for that one.
Actually, I wasn't going to do that at all. This is going to be winning the tag titles.
Oh.
This is going to be a happy story, ultimately. Did people congratulate you in the back? Was that a thing in ECW that people did?
No, we just came back and got changed. Of course, people like, that was a really good match. Thank you. And all that stuff and everything. That was the indication that Johnny wasn't happy about it. That's when I really was clued into it. Teddy was fine. I thanked them up and down. Teddy gave me a hug and be like, all right, run with this, or the encouraging words. Johnny just did kind of the handshake and looked away and then went about his business.
Did you know, because you said that you didn't have much of an inkling you were going to win until pretty much when it came time for you to win it, but did you know when you were going to lose? Was there any indication of like how many weeks or months or whatever you'd hold on to the belts?
No, we knew that the September 10th, 95, when we did the double dog collar match, that night we knew we were going to put the pit bulls over eventually. We were just doing too much stuff, and they were so over as baby faces. We had to put them over. So that's where the timing of it, were we thinking, oh, it's going to be September at the arena at this show? No, not at all. But I think we exhausted all the side quests. We exhausted all the run. We had to do it at a certain point before it jumped the shark. And we didn't, we just felt it, I guess. That was ultimately a Paul decision. But I believe that probably Raven, Dreamer, the inner circle of people said, okay, this is a good time to do it. Once again, I was not privy to that, but I know for a fact that when we got to the building, or when that match was going to happen, say the upcoming 2 out of 3 fall dog collar match, Raven was like, we're going to drop him that night. And we were all for it because we didn't want to get stale either, just holding the belts for no good reason.
It was Pitbull 1 and Pitbull number 2, September 16th, 95, Gangsters Paradise, Philadelphia, PA. You would win
But
the
if
titles.
you factor in Hogan's Stargate theory, those 6 days might have been, we don't know if we crossed the international date line a few times, and it really was September 10th.
Yeah, it says that he held it for 78 days, but if you expand that to include 400 days instead of 365, it's more like 90 days you held the title. You would win the titles back briefly, South Philly Jam, Philadelphia, PA, of course, October 7th. You would lose at the same date to Public Enemy in that same show, but that might be a story.
If the fire goes out, light it again. That was quite the 2 minutes in my life. It took 2 minutes to put me through that table. 2 tables.
One thing that I've said in a future episode is that we're going to go from all weapons and all different kind of things like that, from least painful to most painful. I thought that would be a good video. So that, I hadn't realised you've gone through a flaming table. So that will be something for a future episode. There's a couple more things I want to ask you about the belts. Did ECW make you keep the belts with you at all times until you lost it?
We did keep them with us. We did keep them with us. Um, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was a little bit of a mark. It was like I'm looking at this big gold belt that weighs like probably felt like 30 pounds, 40 pounds. And it was just, I wouldn't stare at it every day, but the fact it was in my bag and I'd bring it there and I'd be like, this is surreal. Now, little did I know, we didn't fly really anywhere, but that's where the rib came in back in the day. You got to go through security and they got to take the belt out. You're delayed. Everybody's laughing. So sometimes one of the belt is a rib to make you travel with it. So it might have been a rib, but for me also, I was very like, I do not want to not talking about losing, putting somebody over. I do not want to misplace and lose this thing because they cost a lot of money back then. There were no replica belts. You had to make them. That was pretty much it.
I always think about, like in the mid-90s when someone won the Super J Cup tournament, they had like 9 or 10 belts carrying around with them. I wonder if like the company that they work for or whoever would spring for the extra, luggage, like, for the carry-on.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. You never check that stuff. You don't check your gear. You don't check the belt because you're going to definitely lose it. But yeah, I mean, I never had the problem of winning 9 belts, so I don't know.
It's just it's one of my favorite little wrestling facts. It's nothing to do with anything before we get to the whiteboard segment. Is that, when Ultimo Dragon had all the belts, and I think it was 96 maybe. One of them was the WWF lightweight title that hadn't been seen on WWF television since like the 80s. And it's somehow either migrated to Mexico or Japan. And that's one of the only, like maybe one of 2 belts from the WWF that appeared on WCW programming. And the other one was Medusa's women's title.
My only thought that how Dragon got that belt was S.A. Rios in Mexico or Tacha Michinoku in Mexico or Japan.
This was pre when it was reintroduced in 97. Yeah, this is 96. So that belt had been floating around other countries for years and years. And just the WWF forgot about it.
I'd have to look into the history of that pre-Taka Michinoku in 97.
Yeah, that was mid-97, and then
before that, who was the champion before that?
In the WWF, may have been Dynamite Kid might have had it as a singles. I think maybe Tiger Mask may have had it. I'd need to look it up. Do you want me to look it up now? Let me just look it up.
Okay.
I hope I haven't got this wrong. There's a WWF lightweight title that Pero Aguayo won in New Japan in 1981. Fishman, Pero Aguayo, Chris Adams. He was mostly defended in Mexico, occasionally in Japan. Great Sasuke, Ultimo Dragon won it. Viano 3. Yeah, Ultimo Dragon did have it, and during this way, the championship becomes part of the NJPW's J Crown, and then I think Ultimo Dragon wins it, and that's how it ends up on WWF TV. Jushin Thunder Liger was one of the last champions, and it was vacated in November of 97, and then Taka Michinoku wins it 1 month later at Degeneration X in Your House 97. How's that for a pointless bit of WWF belt trivia?
You know what? We might have to have a segment of the history of unknown belts, the unknown history of belts.
I'm going to depress you here. I've already written that down as a subject.
There we go.
So
on point with each other.
On that basis, there's one more thing I want to ask you about your title win. Did your holding the tag team title belts ever at any point result in a better payoff?
No.
There you go. So we're going to finish off this show with a whiteboard segment, and I couldn't really think of what to do for this whiteboard segment other than, since we're talking about Raven and obviously his feud with Tommy Dreamer, the one thing that stands out to me more than anything else is the most devastating of chair shots that Tommy lands on Raven. And we go over to now Stevie at the whiteboard, to the Smartboard, to explain more.
Thank you very much, James. Now, this particular moment in ECW history, as well as pro wrestling history, is known as the chair shot heard around the world. Now, before the chair shot heard around the world, there's going to be the crutch to the groin felt around the world. Let's go first there, because Raven, I want to say this too, because we talked about it before this segment, in between segments, about the Mick Foley Rock unprotected chair shots with the handcuffs behind the back. Now, I have no doubt that Raven here is thinking about, I'm unprotected, I'm completely exposed, which in 2024, there's a danger factor, a risk factor. We know more about concussions and CTE. We did not know that back then, but one thing for sure, Raven is handcuffed. Raven is out right now. He's pretty unaware of what's going on, but this crutch or this cane is going to make him very aware of what's going on right there, because he gets a pretty good nut shot. Now, this is for young wrestlers out here, or out there. They're not here. I'm an introvert. I don't let anybody in my house. But Raven, right here, I want to point this out. Raven right here, when you get hit with something like that, real good workers and great workers like Raven are going to close the legs and keep the thing they got nutshotted with there for a few seconds, even if you got to walk around to show the fans that you took this. And of course, on his face, he is screaming. But the worst is not yet to come, or it is yet to come for Raven. So now this part, before the actual violence of the chair shot, is more important, in my opinion, than the actual chair shot. The presentation, as Vince Russo would say, setting the table for this moment. He did the nut shot, which incapacitated Raven. He's handcuffed. He's not going anywhere. And Dreamer is looking down at a steel chair. Now, when he picks that up, he's going to take his time. He's looking around. What Dreamer's doing right here is trying to work all four sides along with the camera. He's scanning right here until he comes back and faces Raven. Before he even does that, I'm going to show you in a second, before he makes eye contact with Raven, he looks down and makes eye contact with the chair. This is what I'm going to take his head off with. This here is a moment. Get ready, looking around. Get your cameras ready, get your cameras ready, get your cameras ready, until he faces here, looks down at the chair, here it comes, and then the actual chair shot. So let's go to the next stage and show you that, because it's super important. Looking around, there he goes right here. That part right there, showing the people that he's going to throw the chair shot. And even looks back, hard camera, and shouts ECW. But right here, this here, just looking at the chair and saying, this is the weapon I'm going to hit him with, and then the ECW. Now, this part right here with the ECW, if this was Suspender Tommy Dreamer, T.D. Madison, the $1 billion baby, the pandering babyface, they would have booed him out of the building. He proved himself. He crossed that Rubicon, and now he's the innovator of violence. This here is a pivotal moment, maybe the most important moment for Dreamer since the 10 cane shots by the Sandman. I dare say this is even more important, because this here, that was the beginning of when the fans started to accept Tommy Dreamer. This here, the innovator of violence, is their favorite babyface wrestler. They're cheering everything he does at this point. And of course, Raven, as cool as he is, they're cheering for the babyface they used to boo to hit the guy that's supposedly cooler than him. So that's awesome. Here he goes. ECW, boom. And he hit him with it. There's a shot right there. And this is 90, 95, so it's not HD. Sorry. Barely get 240p out of this. There's the chair shot. He's holding it, but he kind of threw it at Raven, but it's every bit a chair shot. Unprotected. Break it down right here and show you everything we're looking at. It's really chair shot over here, handcuffs here. Raven doesn't even have a chance to crumble. He doesn't have a chance to take a back bump. He doesn't have a chance to at least get the forearm or the hands up. This here is one of the most dangerous, unprotected chair shots you could ever take. But both guys, within the moment, within the, how should I say, the desire to create a memorable wrestling moment that we're talking about in August 2024, this is the moment I believe that made Dreamer and Raven go to the next level with their storyline and also as really integral characters in ECW history.
At the beginning, you said that Raven got a real concussion. Is that confirmed? He was concussed, as you like, after this chair shot, or did he manage to absorb it somehow?
No, that's just my eyes and my ears hearing the shot. There were no diagnosed concussions or he got his bell rung. I know he got his bell rung, and I know he was woozy, and I know he felt it. But you have to understand, too, at this time with Raven, he's doing certain things to mask that pain, to inhibit it, to ignore it. So there's not a true sense of what am I looking at as far as, my cognitive ability or anything like that. He wasn't affected in the ring, but stuff like this, we still had a week after this to recover because everything was really done Friday, Saturday. And then if you had indie, you would do it on Sunday. So we would be working almost every weekend. So Monday through Friday, he didn't really work. Wrestling was his full-time job. So I think I wasn't around him for those 5 to 6 days or whatever, but I'm sure he was feeling it. He had a migraine, and he definitely, in my estimation, after the fact, 2020 hindsight, he got a concussion. Because that chair shot, dude, the dudes heard it in the back. Like, they heard the chair shot as if they were standing next to Dreamer or Raven.
So we were talking about this beforehand, and you mentioned it briefly during the whiteboard segment as well. And I believe I read in Mick Foley's second book that he described the sensation of having his arms, tied behind his back, handcuffed behind his back, during the Royal Rumble 1999 I Quit match with The Rock. He didn't realise just how much it would impact him to not have his arms free to absorb some of the blow. And I don't mean putting his hands up. I mean just having his hands free to somehow just react to the chair shot landing on him. Do you suspect that Raven having his arms tied would have made the chair shot all the more worse to absorb?
Here's my thought comparing it and taking chair shots throughout my career. You can at least, if you know the chair shot's coming, I think what Mick is talking about, I can't even brace my arms in front of me like this. In other words, when you're like this and you're taking a chair shot, it's literally coming all the way down and compressing right there. If you're like this, I think arms in front bracing can at least kind of soften the blow or really put some kind of, I guess, tension against the blow. But if you're like this and your shoulder's behind you and you're trapping that, you're almost really very exposed. Now with Raven, like I said, he's handcuffed here, but he's literally in the Raven pose with the crucifix pose. Here, his shoulders aren't back and his neck isn't exposed more. This is just my educated guess. Now, he can brace a little bit here where Mick can't really brace. And he's leaned over and he's in a weird position. At least Raven is standing straight up in a vertical position instead of Mick like this. So every chair shot I saw Mick almost hit him in a different part of his head. Do you remember seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like some of them would come from the side or the top, or because he was moving and trying to kind of get position with that. So a chair shot unprotected is a chair shot unprotected. But I do believe mixed chair shots from Rock, there's many more of them, by the way, was really a lot more dangerous and had a lot more negative effect on Mick than Raven. But this one good one, he didn't feel better after that. So I would say, yeah, Mick makes a lot of sense with the handcuff behind his back. Visually, it's a lot more dangerous. It's a lot more exciting. It's a lot more sympathy on a baby face, but it's real. So, yeah, that was definitely probably the most dangerous chair shots I've ever seen consistently thrown at somebody.
As you, Stevie, as a 21-time WWF/WWE Hardcore champion, I know you've
22.
absorbed.
22. Don't listen to Raven. 22.
Oh, it was Wikipedia. I was quoting here. They always write
Raven's
Wikipedia.
editing Wikipedia. There's your clickbait title.
Yeah, Raven, stop editing the Wikipedia, damn it. So there's... is there a specific way that you have found with all the weapon shots that you have taken over the years that, I'm not saying once again putting like you just your hands in the way or anything, but a body position that you can adopt to just take a bit of the sting out of whatever weapon is landing on your head?
Probably the best body position you can pick when taking a weapon shot is never ever entering the ring or the arena.
Let's say that option isn't available to you, you know it's coming, and it's specifically a headshot.
I have no clue. It's one of the, that's why when people say, oh, there's a special technology, they tap the chair twice and it becomes a pillow. And when people say, well, you know the chair shot's coming, that's the worst feeling in the world. When there's 4 hours and you know somebody's going to give you this kind of chair shot. What's worse? I'd rather not know it's coming. I mean, no, I'll see it coming, but I'd rather you not keep telling me, yeah, you just remember, get your hand, don't put your hands up, and it's coming. I'm bringing it. Okay, I don't need to hear that repeatedly, please. So this is one of those things that I'm glad they took it out of the business for the most part, because even a back shot, you're gonna, like I said, the reverberation, you bring your head up, you jar your neck a bit, but they're doing really good business for the talent right now, protecting them from themselves to not have these chair shots. And I know AEW's done it with Jack Perry, the same thing, but that kid could be paying a price 10, 20 years from now.
What was the worst chair shot you ever took?
I took one, the worst one I ever took was Steve Bradley. Steve Bradley was going to hit me with a chair. It was on an indie show, and he hit me with the chair, and it slipped, and the chair, the side of the chair, went right into my mouth and broke these teeth. So he's trying to swing it, but the sweat, it slipped out, and it came at me like a frisbee, right at my mouth.
Okay, I'll re-ask it slightly differently. What was the hardest chair shot you ever took that, didn't end up in your mouth?
Probably the hardest chair shot was from Terry Funk. That three-way dance of Barely Legal, it didn't look like much, but it was when I got thrown over the railing and Sandman did the ladder spot with me. Then Terry came and started beating us both up. I was hanging off the guardrail like this. And there's actually another one. It's a tie. But I wasn't quite in position. Terry took care of me, but it got something about a left-handed chair shot to the head, which is weird in itself. But I wasn't in position, and it kind of came across the side of my head like this. You know what I mean? The other one was, trying to think about it. Oh, good Lord. I forget. Oh, Gary Wolf from the Pitbulls. This is the story that we're going to tell with the double dog collar match. Gary and Anthony whipped me into Gary, or Gary whipped me into Anthony, and I didn't know they were going to throw the chair. They were only whipping me into the barriers, but they whipped me, and I didn't quite see them, but I went like I was going to go into the railing, and my back was like this, and just a chair shot into the back of the head. And it didn't feel great. And I was staggering like this, and they're like, wow, that was a goofy sell. And I was like, sell? What are you talking about?
There's one more thing as well, is that we learned on a previous episode, especially from Gary Wolf, that you do not put your hand up to protect your head from a chair shot in ECW.
Well, you don't put your hands up when the other guy is taking those kinds of chair shots and about 15 from you, and then you put your hands up. That's what we learned.
On that basis, I won't make you sit down and rejig all the microphones. I guess we might as well do the outro now. I will thank everybody for watching so much. We will be back next Friday. We don't know what the subject is. You have sat down. Damn it, I was trying to make your life a bit easier there, but you back?
It's my plyometrics training. I'm able to sit and stand pretty Sitting's easy. Standing's the hard part.
I'm glad you sat down then. I thought it was making your life easier. But on that basis, thank you everybody for watching. We're out every single Friday and on all podcast platforms. We don't know what next week is going to be. As I say, we've got 2 in the queue for Right to Censor, a 2-parter that will be up at some point in September. We're really trying to build up the interest to this one, and it is interesting, let me tell you. A deep dive from Right to Censor you will never ever hear. But for now, thank you everybody for watching. And Stevie, are you doing the outro, the closing?
No, I'll let you do it. You're the leader of the pack. You are the boss.
Okay. That's a damn line, you know it. But that's pretty much it then. So we'll see you again next week with... Oh, no, that's with Dutch. We'll see you later. Thank you.